In this module, I want to talk a little bit about the keys to making sales on Amazon. Probably the number one key to making sales are the keywords. Keywords are the words that you feel are relevant to your product that you build into your listing. For example, into your title, into your bullet points, into your description, and into your back end and like the search term fields. The search terms are what actually customers type in to actually find your product. And the reason that's critical is because without the right keywords, the search terms aren't going to be able to find you. So if you can't even be discovered, you can't even make sales. So learning how to use the Helium 10 tools in Cerebro and Magnet and some of the brand analytics stuff that we've showed you to figure out what are those exact words that you really need to focus on is critical to your success to making sales. Now you got to do a lot more than that. That's just step one. But without that basic foundation, that's the gas that makes the car run. So you've got to have that. You also need to know buyer intent. Always keep that in mind when you're talking about keywords and search terms. For example, if someone types in the search term vitamin C serum, that maybe that's what they're looking for, but they also might be looking for anti-aging, something for anti-aging. And so the keyword that you need to put in your back end is not just vitamin C serum, but you need to put in what their intent might be, which is anti-aging. And so those are important ingredients to being discovered and to making sales on Amazon. Another one that we've talked about previously is conversion. How well you convert on certain keywords. If a lot of people type in vitamin C serum, but they never click on your listing, you're not going to rank very well on it. Remember, Amazon's all about revenue per click or revenue per customer. And so they actually want to show what people actually want to buy. So if you're not converting, you're not going to show up. You might show up for a brief period of time, but then you're just going to slowly fade off the page and go into the never land, and very few people will actually find you. Remember in the last module I talked about your unique session percentage, which is basically your conversion rate. You can get that from your business reports section in Seller Central. And that is actually critical as well. Remember, if you're less than 7%, you need to make some improvements to your listing. That could be in your images, it could be in your copy, it could be your price, it could be the way you're describing the product. You need to do something to really try to boost that up. Another one is if you're 7 to 15% on your conversion rate, then you're doing okay. If you're 15 to 20%, you're doing good. If you're above 20%, that's great, especially if you have quite a few sessions coming in. So those are things you really need to pay attention to and try to improve your listing against everybody else. Your sales velocity is also super important on Amazon. The more steady it is, the better you are. You don't want to be fluctuating up and down all the time. That's not a good indicator to the A9. That's an indicator to them that something funny is going on, or you're messing with your listing, or some customers like you and some don't. There's a number of reasons, but you don't want to be going up and down. You want to try to either maintain that pretty steady or on a steady incline going upwards towards more and more sales. Another thing that's very, very important to making sales is where you show up in the organic results. Now PPC, you can influence this and you can bid your way to the top of the page, and there's some ways to do that. And as long as you're converting, you can actually win top of the page bids and sometimes do very, very well there. But the top 3 positions on the page, positions 1, 2, and 3 that are organic, this is once you go past the ones that say sponsored, those are critical positions that you actually want to get to. And really you need to be in the top 10. If you're not in the top 10 on most search results pages, you're going to make very, very few sales. Even if you're at the bottom of page 1, you're going to make few sales. You really need to be in those top 3 if you can, and top 10 are pretty much a must. And so you need to find keywords that you can actually compete and get into those positions. Very few people actually even ever go past page 1 of their search results. Usually they find what they're looking for there, or they go down a rabbit hole on page 1, and they never go past page 1. So only about 30% go past page 1. Now there are times where not being in the top 10 actually can be okay, and that's on more general terms where people are truly shopping, like Mother's Day gifts or something like that, where people may actually go and tend to scroll past the top 10 and maybe even go into page 2 or page 3 until they see something that catches their eye. So more general gift-giving terms like that, it's okay to not be in the top group and still do pretty well. I mean, it's better if you're in the top group, but if not, you can still actually do pretty well in those general search terms. One thing you always need to remember when you're selling on Amazon is always focus on your profits, not on your sales. Too many people I see post numbers of I'm doing $1 million in sales on Amazon, and they post these screenshots and stuff, and who cares? At the end of the day, it's about how much you put in your pocket, about how much you take home, not about how much you make. And so a lot of times I know a lot of people that are totally happy selling $300,000-$400,000 a year on Amazon and putting $100,000 in their pocket over someone doing $1 million a year on Amazon and putting $70,000 in their pocket with a lot more headaches. So always focus on the profits, not sales. You don't have to be the top seller. It's not a vanity thing. You don't need to be the top BSR. If your competition all of a sudden is selling more than you, as long as your sales are not suffering, who cares? You can go reverse engineer what he's doing and see if you might be able to learn something from that. But don't get too obsessed with other people. Unless they're directly attacking you or taking market share away from you, then you need to react and figure out what's going on and how you're going to compete. Another thing is you always want to make sure your main image is popping. Your main image is crucial on sales on Amazon. Now there's certain rules that you can and can't do. It's supposed to be on a white background. You'll see people violate that rule sometimes, but you should play by the rule. But there's creative things you can do with that main image to make it stand out. You know, for example, if it's a bunch of dog treats, like for one time I used to sell dog treats that were made out of salmon. And what I would do is I actually have the bag of the dog treats and have it spilled over. So it's like some of the salmon pieces or salmon treats are spilled out, and I'd spell the word fish with the treats. I'd take the word fish and actually spell it in front of the spilled out bag so that when someone's eye is scanning the page, that word fish would stand out. That was the actual product. I wasn't doing anything against Amazon's terms of service. I was showing the actual product, but I was being creative with it. What I like to do is take my main image and I'll take a screenshot of the search term page, of all this whole screenshot of the page, and I'll drop my image in there. And I'll sometimes run a test on audiences on Helium 10 and actually see which one is people's eyes drawn to. And if I see that people's eyes are drawn to one of my competitors, they'll usually tell me why in the comments, and I'm like, okay, that's some good information. Let me modify mine, and I'll run another test, because you want to get that click. You've got to get people at least to your page, and so that's so critical to really focus on that main image. The rest of your images are super important, but there's nothing more important than that main image. Your price is also important, but if you can intrigue people, even with a higher price, with a good image, you can intrigue people to click through, and then once you're there on your page, they're there on your page, you can, if you got good copy and good images and good video, you can convert them. You can convince them to maybe even pay a higher price than what they would have otherwise paid. Another thing that can help you stand out right below your main image is if you're running coupons or discounts. Sometimes if you're running those clippable coupons, those orange coupons, Amazon will show that, or if you're running a deal, or sometimes even by lowering your price, Amazon will show a little flag that says lowest price in the last 30 days or something like that. We'll talk about more of that in a future module, but those little things can help you stand out as well. Now, you also have to keep in mind what's important to the customer when they're evaluating your listing. We have the things that are important to us to try to get them there, but what's the customer, what's in their mind, what's important to them? And there's really like 5 or 6 things that are primarily what they're looking for. Number one, a lot of customers, they do look at the price, and that doesn't mean you have to be the lowest price, but your price has to be justified by your copy and your image. But they are going to consider the price. They're also going to consider whether it's prime shipping. So is this FBA? They trust Amazon to ship it to them in a day or two, but they don't necessarily trust if it's coming from somewhere else. So they're going to look at that prime shipping badge, and is it prime? If it's not prime, and you're having to do it yourself or FBM, how fast can they get it? And do they trust you? What's your seller feedback score? Some people will click through and see if there's complaints there about slow shipping or never arriving or something. So make sure those scores stay high, and if you can on FBM, ship as fast as you can, and shorten that window. There's ways you can control that in the back end of Seller Central, where you can put how long it takes you to ship. The shorter the window that you can ship, the better, because Amazon will give an estimate of when it's going to arrive if it's FBM, and you don't want that date to be too far out, and they'll overestimate. They'll add some time to that, so keep that in mind. Another thing is the number of reviews you have. That makes a difference and the quality of the reviews. You know, the Amazon algorithm, it actually likes longer reviews. It doesn't like short reviews. It actually rewards longer, well-written reviews than short 3 or 4 word reviews. Customers are the same. They're not probably not going to look at all of your reviews, but they're going to look at the star rating, what's your overall rating, and then they might read the first page of reviews. And then they might actually click on the best ones and the negative ones and read some of those. And beyond that, they're probably not going to read everything else. But the quality of your reviews and the number of reviews you have are pretty important from a customer's point of view. And the brand on Amazon is typically not as important. Now, there are some customers that do want certain brands, but for the vast majority of buyers on Amazon, the brand is not super important to them. And so that's what the beauty of Amazon is us small sellers can compete against some of the biggest brands in the world. But they will look at that brand, and if it's a brand that looks legitimate, if they click through onto the brand page and there's a really good storefront, that gives them a lot of extra confidence to actually like, okay, this is a good seller, this is a good company, I'm going to give them a shot. And then remember, the perceived value of is what validates your listing. So back up on that price, which is super important. You've got to present and justify the price that you're selling at with your images and with your copy. We're going to talk about this more when we get into the launching phase of launching your product. But when you're targeting search terms on Amazon, you don't always want to target the big, huge keywords that get lots of searches. Sometimes those actually make a lot of sales, but they're hyper competitive. A lot of times it's better to actually target the mid-range and lower range, more longer tail. And longer tail means more words in the keyword. Typically those have higher conversion rates, and they're typically not as competitive. So that's something to keep in mind too when you're trying to make sales on Amazon. You can work your way around the bases, and later on you'll hit those home runs and grand slams. But initially, just get on base and build up your steam so that you can start ranking on more and more things and do better over time. Remember, this is a long-term plan. This is not an instant rank and crush it out of the gate kind of thing. Also, something to keep in mind on Amazon is about 75% of the sales on Amazon occur between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. Pacific time. So that's the big window of when most sales occur on Amazon. People are awake or they're at the office. They're not dealing with family. They're not sleeping in the United States. So between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. Pacific time is when the vast majority of your sales are going to come in. And the last thing I just got to leave you with on making sales is I've reiterated this over and over and over. You've got to differentiate. You have to differentiate your product. If you don't differentiate your product, good luck. We'll see you in the next module.